The autumn fog hangs thick over Whitmore Common, muffling the frantic calls of searchers combing through yellowed grass and bare oak branches. Imagine the terror. One moment you're watching your child play, the next they've vanished into thin air. But when Sherlock Holmes arrives at this seemingly impossible mystery, he sees what everyone else has missed. 6-year-old Timothy Ashford disappeared from his nursemaid's sight during their morning walk. No scream, no struggle, simply gone between one heartbeat and the next. Local whispers speak of the Whitmore Wraith, a phantom that spirits away children when the mist rolls in from the moors. The villagers cross themselves and mutter ancient prayers. But Holmes? He sees opportunity where others see supernatural terror. Inspector Bradshaw directs a dozen constables in expanding circles, their boots trampling what evidence might remain. The scene appears hopeless, until Holmes kneels beside Timothy's abandoned wooden hoop, still spinning near the old stone well. His keen eyes narrow as he examines something extraordinary. 2 identical shoe prints in the soft earth, one leading toward the well, another facing the opposite direction. The fog begins to lift, revealing what makes the great detective's pulse quicken with understanding. This isn't about ghosts or ancient curses. This is about human deception so cleverly orchestrated that an entire village has been fooled into believing the impossible. But here's what will shock you. The truth behind Timothy's disappearance connects to a web of corruption reaching the highest levels of Victorian society. A conspiracy involving medical fraud, inheritance schemes, and institutional cover-ups that spans decades. Stay with me through this investigation, because what Holmes discovers will challenge everything you think you know about missing children cases in Victorian England. If you're ready to dive deep into this mind-bending mystery, hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single clue. Trust me, you'll want to see how this impossible case gets solved. The cast of characters Holmes encounters reveals a village hiding dark secrets beneath its respectable facade. Mrs. Eleanor Ashford, Timothy's mother, clutches a silver locket and refuses to believe supernatural explanations, yet her trembling suggests she knows more than she admits. Nurse Margaret Holcomb, whose hands shake with more than simple shock, insists Timothy never left her sight, but her timeline doesn't match the evidence. Reverend Whitmore, the village patriarch, speaks ominously of generational sins, while Dr. Samuel Cross displays intimate knowledge of every family's medical secrets. Most intriguing is Inspector Bradshaw himself, torn between superstition and procedure in ways that suggest personal investment beyond professional duty. Whitmore Common stretches between the village church and the old mill pond, with the mysterious stone well serving as the focal point. Hidden paths wind through Blackthorn Grove, leading to abandoned Ashford Manor, Timothy's ancestral home, left empty since his grandfather's death. Every location connects through the village square, while the rectory basement holds genealogical records dating back centuries. Holmes examines 3 crucial pieces of evidence that transform this from supernatural mystery to calculated crime. First, those impossible double shoe prints, same size, different makers, as if 2 identical children walked to the well together. Second, a torn piece of expensive fabric caught on the well's iron grating belongs to no one present at the scene. Third, and most puzzling, Timothy's wooden hoop continues spinning despite the perfectly still air, defying physics and reason. The detective's methodical approach reveals disturbing discrepancies. Nurse Holcomb claims Timothy never left her sight, yet admits to stopping at the bakery, just for a moment. Reverend Whitmore insists he saw the child by the well at 9:30 a.m., but the baker's clock shows Holcomb's visit at 9:45 a.m. Dr. Cross mentions treating Timothy for a peculiar foot ailment, information he shouldn't possess without recent examination. Time pressure mounts as the annual harvest festival approaches at sunset, when tradition says the Whitmore Wraith grows strongest. This deadline creates urgency that benefits someone wanting quick conclusions, rather than thorough investigation. Holmes's first logical shock comes through precise measurement and observation. The second footprint wasn't made by Timothy at all, but by a different shoe. Same size, different manufacturer. This means 2 children were at the well, not 1. But where is the second child? And why would Timothy's disappearance require a decoy? The fabric analysis reveals expensive material far beyond a nursemaid's means, suggesting an accomplice with significant resources. The spinning hoop defies natural explanation until Holmes discovers tiny scratches on the well's pulley system, evidence of recent mechanical use. As evening shadows lengthen across Whitmore Common, Holmes realizes this case involves carefully orchestrated human deception rather than supernatural intervention. The question becomes not whether Timothy was taken by spirits, but who had the knowledge, resources, and motive to create such an elaborate illusion of supernatural disappearance. The village's reaction to Holmes's methodical approach reveals underlying tensions. Some welcome rational explanation, while others seem invested in maintaining supernatural mystery. This division suggests the truth threatens certain individuals more than others. Hidden beneath the surface lies a conspiracy that required intimate knowledge of village customs, access to historical records, and the ability to manipulate official investigations. Someone transformed Timothy's disappearance into folklore to hide systematic criminal activity spanning generations. Holmes confronts witnesses with surgical precision, revealing cracks in carefully constructed lies. Nurse Holcomb's medical records show severe arthritis in both hands, making it physically impossible to operate the heavy well pulley or carry a struggling child. Her suspicious behavior stems from self-medicating with laudanum, explaining her disorientation and contradictory timeline. This revelation forces Holmes to reconsider everything. If not the nursemaid, then who has both motive and capability for such sophisticated deception? The answer emerges through systematic evidence tampering. Someone has been removing clues overnight. The expensive fabric vanishes from Holmes's collection. Witness statements are mysteriously altered in police files, and fingerprints are wiped from the well mechanism. This systematic obstruction suggests someone with institutional access and advanced knowledge of the investigation process. Dr. Cross emerges as increasingly suspicious. His medical knowledge explains chloroform traces found on the well's rim. His village status provides cover for evidence manipulation, and his intimate knowledge of Ashford family secrets suggests personal investment beyond professional duty. Holmes observes the doctor's compulsive hand-washing and nervous habit of checking his pocket watch, behaviors indicating guilt and time-sensitive planning. Technical analysis reveals rope burns on the ancient pulley system and chemical residue consistent with chloroform sedation. These findings suggest mechanical rather than supernatural intervention, requiring medical knowledge and preparation time. The emotional breakthrough comes through Timothy's hidden artwork. In his nursery, Holmes discovers a child's drawing depicting two boys who look identical, labeled "Me and My Secret Brother." But the Ashfords claim Timothy is an only child. This innocent revelation connects to genealogical records in the rectory basement, showing Lord Ashford had twin sons decades ago, though official documents list only one survivor. Holmes experiments with timeline reconstruction, creating detailed maps that overlay witness accounts with physical evidence. The process reveals a 15-minute window where Timothy could have been sedated and lowered into the well's hidden chamber system, then retrieved through underground passages connecting to Ashford Manor. Village social dynamics shift as Holmes's investigation proceeds. Mrs. Ashford experiences relief mixed with new terror. If not a random abduction, then someone close orchestrated Timothy's disappearance. Reverend Whitmore becomes defensively evasive when questioned about incomplete genealogical records, while Inspector Bradshaw exhibits suspicious hostility toward Holmes's methods. The inheritance angle emerges through legal document analysis. The Ashford estate involves a complex trust requiring male heir survival to age 7. Timothy's 7th birthday is 1 month away. If he dies or disappears permanently, the entire estate transfers to the village church with Reverend Whitmore as trustee, creating clear financial motivation for multiple conspirators. Holmes realizes the case involves inheritance fraud, using medical expertise to create convincing disappearance while keeping the victim alive until legal requirements are met. The supernatural explanation serves to discourage thorough investigation and accelerate official conclusions of accidental death. Dr. Cross's background investigation reveals troubling patterns. 20 years ago, he falsified death certificates for poor families, selling surplus children to wealthy, childless couples. His medical practice served as a front for an illegal adoption ring, explaining his protective behavior regarding Timothy's case and his intimate knowledge of family medical history spanning generations. The detective's methodology shift reflects new understanding. This isn't about finding Timothy's body, but locating his temporary hiding place before the conspirators complete their timeline. Surveillance becomes crucial, with Holmes establishing observation points around likely locations while avoiding detection by institutional accomplices. Evidence preservation becomes challenging as official support erodes. Chief Inspector Morrison arrives from London, ordering the case classified as accidental death and demanding immediate cessation of investigation. Morrison's unusual urgency and specific knowledge of sealed Ashford family records suggest high-level pressure to suppress the truth. Holmes faces the classic dilemma of detective fiction, pursuing justice while protecting innocent parties from unnecessary exposure. Mrs. Ashford's confession that Timothy was adopted illegally to preserve the family name after her husband's war-induced sterility creates additional complexity, as revealing this truth could destroy their marriage while concealing it might endanger the child's life. The emotional stakes intensify as Holmes realizes time is running out. The conspirators have planned Timothy's final disposal to coincide with Harvest Festival activities, using public celebration to mask criminal completion of their inheritance fraud scheme. Holmes's investigation takes a shocking turn when systematic evidence analysis reveals the true scope of deception. The case transforms from simple kidnapping to decades-long inheritance fraud, involving institutional corruption at the highest levels. The reversal begins with Dr. Cross's medical records. Holmes discovers the doctor has been systematically falsifying genealogical documents for 20 years, creating fictional deaths and births to manipulate inheritance law. Timothy's case represents the culmination of this systematic fraud, not a random crime, but the final step in a carefully orchestrated wealth transfer scheme. Underground investigation of Ashford Manor reveals recently constructed hiding chambers equipped with medical monitoring equipment, ventilation systems, and supply storage. These aren't hastily improvised kidnapping locations, but professionally designed facilities for long-term imprisonment of conscious victims. The sophistication suggests military or institutional backing beyond simple village conspiracy. Holmes realizes Timothy isn't the first victim. 3 similar cases from neighboring counties over the past decade involve children temporarily disappeared, then returned with no memory of their absence. Each case involved medical intervention, falsified records, and authority figures who suppressed investigation. The pattern reveals a systematic child trafficking operation, using inheritance fraud as cover for broader criminal enterprise. The genealogical records in the rectory basement contain forged entries dating back decades. Holmes discovers that multiple wealthy families have been targeted for inheritance manipulation through strategically timed accidents and disappearances of heir children. The conspirators create legal chaos, then position themselves as estate administrators to embezzle funds systematically. Dr. Cross's role expands beyond simple village doctor to regional coordinator of the trafficking network. His medical practice provides legitimate cover for sedation chemicals, his professional reputation enables evidence manipulation, and his institutional connections ensure official investigation suppression. The chloroform traces and rope burns represent standard operating procedure rather than improvised kidnapping methods. The shocking revelation about Timothy's secret brother proves accurate but inverted. The genealogical records show twins were born, but one was sold through Dr. Cross's illegal adoption network. Timothy's biological twin has been located by the criminal organization and is being used as a physical double to create confusion about identity and timeline during the kidnapping operation. Holmes pieces together the complete deception. Timothy was sedated and replaced by his twin at the well, creating impossible physical evidence while the real Timothy was transported to Ashford Manor's hidden chambers. The spinning hoop was mechanically triggered by the twin as misdirection, while witness testimony was deliberately confused through coordinated false statements. Village banker Mr. Thornfield emerges as the financial orchestrator, having advanced loans against future Ashford estate transfers. Each participant profits from Timothy's permanent disappearance while maintaining individual plausible deniability. The conspiracy requires institutional coordination across medical, religious, financial, and legal authorities. Inspector Bradshaw's hostility toward Holmes stems from direct financial involvement in the inheritance fraud. His evidence tampering and investigation obstruction serve to protect not just the immediate conspirators, but his own criminal liability in previous cases involving similar methodology. The supernatural explanation serves multiple criminal purposes. It discourages rational investigation, validates witness testimony confusion, and creates public pressure for quick resolution rather than thorough evidence analysis. Local folklore about the Whitmore Wraith was deliberately cultivated over years, to provide cover for systematic child trafficking operations. Holmes realizes the festival deadline is artificial pressure created by the conspirators to force hasty conclusions. The real timeline involves legal paperwork that must be completed before Timothy's 7th birthday, triggers inheritance protection mechanisms that would expose the fraud. Mrs. Ashford's confession about Timothy's adoption history reveals she was unknowingly complicit in the original criminal network. Her desperation to protect her husband's reputation by accepting an illegally adopted child provided the conspirators with leverage to manipulate the current situation. The case expands beyond personal crime to systematic institutional corruption involving multiple government levels. Chief Inspector Morrison's intervention from London suggests the trafficking network has connections to parliamentary and judicial authorities who profit from estate manipulation schemes. Holmes faces the realization that solving Timothy's case alone won't end the criminal enterprise. The network will simply relocate operations and continue trafficking children using refined methodology based on lessons learned from this investigation's challenges. The emotional reversal affects all participants as they understand the true scope of victimization. Timothy's disappearance represents not random tragedy, but calculated exploitation of legal loopholes and institutional corruption that threatens every wealthy family with child heirs throughout the region. Time pressure intensifies as Holmes realizes the conspirators have contingency plans for investigation discovery. Timothy's safety depends not just on rescue, but on gathering sufficient evidence to prosecute the entire network before they eliminate witnesses and relocate operations. The revelation of systematic inheritance fraud triggers profound reactions across Whitmore Village as residents confront decades of institutional betrayal. Mrs. Ashford experiences psychological collapse when she realizes her illegal adoption of Timothy wasn't charitable rescue, but participation in systematic child trafficking that funded the very network now threatening her family. Holmes observes fascinating character psychology as each conspirator reacts to investigation pressure. Dr. Cross increases his compulsive behaviors, obsessive hand-washing escalates to hourly ritual, and his pocket watch checking becomes every few minutes. These stress responses reveal a methodical personality under extreme pressure, suggesting he'll follow established protocols even when improvisation would be safer. Reverend Whitmore's defensive evasion transforms into aggressive misdirection as he begins preaching inflammatory sermons about foreign influences corrupting village tradition. His psychological strategy involves mobilizing community paranoia against outside investigation to protect internal criminal operations. Holmes notes this technique suggests experience managing public opinion during previous criminal episodes. Village social dynamics shift dramatically as residents realize their trusted authority figures orchestrated systematic deception. Banker Thornfield's financial manipulations come under scrutiny as families discover their estate planning documents contain suspicious clauses that would benefit the conspirators in case of heir disappearance. The community's faith in institutional integrity collapses rapidly. Holmes adjusts his investigation strategy to accommodate multiple hostile actors with institutional protection. Rather than confronting suspects directly, he implements parallel investigation tracks, surveillance of physical locations, financial audit of suspicious transactions, and genealogical verification of manipulated records. This approach prevents evidence destruction while building comprehensive criminal cases. The detective establishes secure communication networks outside official channels to avoid Inspector Bradshaw's interference. Watson coordinates with trusted constables from neighboring jurisdictions who lack financial investment in the conspiracy. Signal systems using church bell patterns and lantern codes enable coordinated response without telegraph interception that could alert the criminals. Mrs. Ashford's emotional journey becomes central to case resolution as she transitions from victim to active participant in investigation. Her intimate knowledge of Timothy's habits and fears provides crucial insights for predicting his psychological state during imprisonment. Her maternal desperation overcomes social conditioning about proper feminine behavior, transforming her into fierce advocate for justice. Inspector Bradshaw's psychology reveals compartmentalized criminality. He genuinely believes in law enforcement principles while simultaneously participating in systematic corruption. His hostile reactions to Holmes stem from cognitive dissonance rather than pure malice, making him potentially vulnerable to psychological manipulation during crucial confrontations. Holmes realizes the conspiracy's greatest weakness lies in participants' different psychological profiles and motivations. Dr. Cross operates from medical perfectionism, Reverend Whitmore from religious authority, Banker Thornfield from financial opportunism, and Inspector Bradshaw from institutional loyalty. These conflicting approaches create coordination vulnerabilities under extreme pressure. The financial investigation reveals systematic estate looting spanning 2 decades, with the conspirators embezzling funds from multiple wealthy families through strategically created inheritance chaos. Each successful operation funded expansion of the criminal network and corruption of additional officials, creating exponential growth in criminal capability and institutional protection. Village residents begin independent investigation efforts as they realize official authorities cannot be trusted. This grassroots movement provides Holmes with additional intelligence sources while creating pressure on the conspirators, who must now manage community suspicion alongside official investigation. The criminals' increased visibility makes covert operations significantly more difficult. Timothy's psychological state becomes a critical factor in rescue planning. Holmes deduces that prolonged sedation and isolation have likely created disorientation and fear that could complicate rescue attempts. The child may not recognize legitimate rescuers or may have been psychologically manipulated to trust his captors and fear other adults. Dr. Cross's medical expertise creates unique challenges for evidence gathering. His knowledge of forensic investigation enables sophisticated evidence destruction, while his understanding of psychology allows him to manipulate witnesses effectively. Holmes must anticipate medical countermeasures in planning both rescue operations and legal evidence preservation. The inheritance fraud timeline reveals systematic targeting of wealthy families during vulnerable periods, recent deaths, business crises, or family disputes that create opportunities for legal manipulation. The conspirators demonstrate sophisticated intelligence gathering and social analysis capabilities that extend far beyond simple village criminal enterprise. The emotional stakes escalate as Holmes realizes rescuing Timothy won't guarantee his safety if the broader criminal network remains operational. The child becomes both victim and witness, whose testimony could expose decades of institutional corruption, making him permanent target for elimination by desperate criminals facing life imprisonment or execution. Community psychology shifts from supernatural fear to institutional paranoia as residents realize their trusted leaders systematically betrayed them. This psychological transformation provides Holmes with motivated allies, but also creates volatile social conditions that could complicate rescue operations if panic leads to mob violence against suspected conspirators. The investigation reaches critical juncture as Holmes must balance immediate rescue needs against long-term justice requirements, knowing that hasty action could save Timothy while allowing the criminal network to escape and continue operations elsewhere with refined methodology based on lessons learned from this case. The conspiracy web expands beyond village boundaries as Holmes uncovers international connections to the child trafficking network. Financial records reveal payments from wealthy European families seeking discreet adoption services through Dr. Cross's medical practice, transforming local inheritance fraud into systematic international child trafficking operation, serving aristocratic clients seeking heirs without legal complications. Parliamentary investigation threats emerge when Chief Inspector Morrison's London intervention triggers attention from reform-minded MPs investigating institutional corruption. The conspirators face exposure at governmental level, creating desperation that makes them increasingly dangerous to witnesses. Holmes realizes Timothy's rescue must occur before political pressure forces the criminals to eliminate evidence permanently. Village social dynamics create unexpected complications as community vigilante groups form spontaneously to protect children from perceived supernatural threats. These well-intentioned but misguided efforts interfere with Holmes's surveillance operations while providing cover for criminal activities. The detective must manage citizen safety while preventing interference with evidence gathering. Mrs. Ashford's investigation of Timothy's biological origins reveals connections to Irish political refugees whose children were systematically harvested for English adoption markets. Her discoveries expose ethnic targeting within the trafficking network, suggesting systematic exploitation of political instability and poverty to supply wealthy clients with physically and culturally desired children. Dr. Cross's psychological deterioration accelerates under investigation pressure, leading to increasingly erratic medical practice that threatens to expose the conspiracy through professional incompetence. His prescription errors and diagnostic mistakes create suspicious patterns that alert London medical authorities, forcing the criminal network to consider eliminating him as liability. Hidden tunnels beneath Whitmore Village reveal systematic infrastructure development over decades, connecting the church, manor, medical practice, and bank through underground passages that enable covert movement of victims and evidence. Archaeological analysis suggests these modifications required significant financial investment and professional engineering expertise beyond local capabilities. International diplomatic complications emerge as foreign governments begin investigating missing children cases with similar methodology. Embassy inquiries about British adoption agencies create official pressure that threatens to expose the trafficking network's international scope, forcing accelerated timeline for operation completion and evidence destruction. Reverend Whitmore's religious authority enables psychological manipulation of victims through spiritual counseling that induces amnesia and compliance. His theological training in confession and spiritual guidance provides sophisticated psychological control techniques that explain why previous victims returned without clear memories of their experiences during captivity. Banking investigation reveals systematic money laundering through church charitable contributions and medical practice donations that legitimize trafficking profits. The financial complexity suggests professional criminal organization with accountancy expertise and offshore banking connections that extend far beyond amateur village conspiracy. Inspector Bradshaw's family connections to previous trafficking cases create personal vulnerability, as Holmes discovers the inspector's own children were threatened to ensure cooperation. This revelation transforms him from willing participant to coerced accomplice, potentially creating ally for Holmes if approached with appropriate psychological strategy. Village childhood folklore analysis reveals deliberate cultivation of supernatural beliefs over generations to provide cover for systematic child disappearances. Local legends about the Whitmore Wraith were strategically developed through selective storytelling and staged supernatural events that conditioned community acceptance of unexplained child losses. Timothy's biological twin investigation reveals systematic identity manipulation involving forged birth certificates, medical records, and educational documentation. The sophistication of identity creation suggests connections to government document forging operations, possibly involving wartime espionage networks repurposed for criminal enterprise during peacetime. Medical supply analysis exposes industrial-scale sedation operations requiring pharmaceutical connections beyond simple village doctor capabilities. Chemical analysis of residues suggests military or hospital-grade anesthetic supplies, indicating institutional corruption extending to major medical suppliers and possibly government military facilities. International adoption agency connections reveal legitimate cover organizations that facilitate legal trafficking operations across European borders. These agencies provide documentation and transportation services that enable systematic child trafficking under legal adoption procedures, creating regulatory compliance that prevents investigation. Community psychology research reveals multi-generational trauma patterns suggesting systematic child trafficking operations spanning decades rather than recent criminal innovation. Genealogical analysis indicates multiple families experienced unexplained child losses during previous generations, creating community-wide conditioning to accept supernatural explanations rather than investigating criminal causes. Financial audit expansion reveals estate manipulation involving dozens of wealthy families across multiple counties, with the Ashford case representing only recent example of systematic inheritance fraud. The criminal network's scope suggests coordination with legal professionals, bank officials, and government registry clerks across regional boundaries. Holmes realizes the case requires coordinated law enforcement response beyond individual detective capabilities, necessitating careful coordination with trusted officials, while avoiding institutional corruption that could alert criminals to impending arrests. The challenge becomes distinguishing trustworthy authorities from criminal network participants. Time pressure intensifies as multiple investigation tracks converge toward simultaneous exposure of the criminal network, rescue of current victims, and prevention of evidence destruction. Holmes must coordinate complex operations across multiple locations while maintaining operational security against sophisticated criminal countermeasures. Holmes confronts the profound ethical complexity of Victorian social hierarchy, when Mrs. Ashford's desperate confession reveals the full scope of her complicity in systematic child trafficking. Her tearful admission that she knowingly accepted an illegally adopted child to preserve family social standing forces Holmes to weigh individual justice against broader child safety concerns. The intimate rupture scene occurs in Lord Ashford's study, where family portraits of deceased relatives create haunting backdrop for Mrs. Ashford's emotional breakdown. She confesses that Timothy wasn't Lord Ashford's biological son. He was acquired through Dr. Cross's adoption network after her husband's war injury-induced sterility. Her desperate need to produce an heir to preserve the family name led her to participate unknowingly in the very criminal network now threatening Timothy's life. Holmes faces impossible moral calculations. Revealing Mrs. Ashford's participation in illegal adoption could destroy her marriage and expose her to criminal prosecution, but concealing this information might endanger Timothy's life if his biological family has discovered his location and inheritance value. The detective must choose between comprehensive truth-telling and strategic information management to protect innocent parties. Mrs. Ashford's psychological journey reveals complex victimization patterns within systematic criminal operations. Her initial desperate need for social respectability made her vulnerable to exploitation by criminals who understood aristocratic pressure for male heirs. Now, her maternal love for Timothy transcends legal technicalities, creating fierce determination to protect the child regardless of biological parentage. Dr. Cross's backstory emerges through emotional investigation as Holmes discovers the doctor's transformation from idealistic medical student to systematic criminal. 20 years ago, Cross began falsifying death certificates for poor families, selling surplus children to wealthy childless couples as economic survival strategy. His medical practice gradually evolved into front for systematic child trafficking as demand exceeded his initial charitable intentions. The emotional complexity deepens when Holmes realizes Cross genuinely believes his activities serve humanitarian purposes by matching unwanted children with loving, financially stable families. His psychological compartmentalization enables him to view systematic fraud and trafficking as medical practice serving community welfare, creating cognitive dissonance that makes him dangerous when confronted with evidence of his criminal impact. Inspector Bradshaw's family vulnerability creates profound ethical dilemma for Holmes. As investigation reveals, the inspector's children were systematically threatened to ensure cooperation with evidence tampering. Bradshaw's hostile behavior stems from parental desperation rather than criminal greed, making him potential ally if approached with appropriate psychological strategy that addresses family safety concerns. Village community psychology reveals multi-generational trauma conditioning that enables systematic criminal operations to continue undetected. Residents have been psychologically conditioned over decades to accept supernatural explanations for child disappearances rather than investigating criminal causes, creating institutional blindness that protects trafficking networks through community complicity. Mrs. Ashford's maternal transformation becomes central to case resolution, as her desperate love for Timothy overcomes Victorian social conditioning about proper feminine behavior. Her willingness to abandon social respectability and pursue active investigation demonstrates how criminal victimization can paradoxically liberate individuals from restrictive social conventions that initially made them vulnerable to exploitation. Holmes struggles with personal emotional investment in Timothy's case as the child's innocence and vulnerability trigger protective instincts that threaten professional objectivity. The detective must balance emotional commitment to individual victim against broader responsibility to expose systematic criminal operations that threaten countless other children. Reverend Whitmore's psychological manipulation of religious authority creates community-wide emotional dependency that enables criminal operations through spiritual coercion. His theological training in confession and spiritual guidance provides sophisticated psychological control techniques that explain how he maintains community loyalty despite participation in systematic child trafficking operations. The emotional climax involves Holmes's realization that solving Timothy's case requires sacrificing some individual privacy and family stability to prevent broader criminal operations from continuing. This utilitarian calculation conflicts with his natural empathy for innocent parties who become collateral damage in pursuit of systematic justice. Dr. Cross's family history reveals personal victimization that initially motivated his criminal transformation. His own sister was sold through illegal adoption during family economic crisis, creating psychological trauma that he attempted to resolve through controlled participation in similar trafficking operations. His criminal behavior represents traumatic reenactment rather than pure greed. Holmes recognizes that emotional manipulation forms the core of systematic criminal operations, as traffickers exploit natural human desires for family, social acceptance, and financial security to create voluntary participation in criminal enterprises. Understanding these psychological vulnerabilities becomes crucial for both rescue operations and prevention of future criminal recruitment. The emotional stakes intensify as Holmes realizes Timothy's psychological recovery will require not just physical rescue but systematic treatment for trauma conditioning that may have permanently altered his personality and memory. The child's emotional healing becomes as important as his physical safety in determining successful case resolution. Community emotional healing requires not just criminal prosecution, but acknowledgement of systematic institutional betrayal that enabled decades of child trafficking through coordinated corruption of trusted authority figures who manipulated natural human trust for criminal purposes. Serial pattern analysis reveals the trafficking network's systematic methodology across multiple counties and decades. Holmes identifies 13 similar cases where children temporarily disappeared, then returned with amnesia and subtle behavioral changes. Each incident involved medical intervention, falsified records, and authority figures who suppressed investigation through supernatural explanations or bureaucratic obstruction. The consistent operational elements create a disturbing picture of industrial-scale child trafficking. Chloroform sedation for transport, rope and pulley systems for moving unconscious victims, underground hiding facilities equipped with medical monitoring and psychological manipulation techniques designed to induce amnesia in young victims before return to families. Timothy's favorite toy horse appears hanging from the church bell tower at dawn, accompanied by a cryptic note demanding cessation of investigation, or the child joins his ancestors permanently. This public display creates village-wide panic and unwanted media attention from London newspapers, forcing accelerated timeline for resolution while creating additional pressure on Holmes to solve quickly or accept supernatural explanations. Village social psychology transforms from supernatural fear to institutional paranoia as residents realize their trusted leaders systematically betrayed community trust. Public pressure mounts on Holmes to provide immediate answers while simultaneously demanding he abandon investigation to prevent further escalation by desperate criminals facing exposure and prosecution. Dr. Cross's medical office discovered ransacked with patient records stolen and chemical inventory missing suggests internal conflict within the criminal network. Holmes realizes the systematic evidence destruction indicates either external attack by competing criminal organization or internal elimination of liability by network leadership seeking to protect higher-level participants from exposure. The Harvest Festival transforms from cultural celebration to potential public safety crisis as hundreds of families with young children plan attendance. Village authorities threaten event cancellation, creating economic disaster for local businesses and political pressure on law enforcement to restore community confidence through rapid case resolution rather than thorough investigation. Underground tunnel system mapping reveals sophisticated infrastructure connecting all major conspiracy locations: church basement, manor foundations, medical practice storage areas, and bank vault access. The engineering complexity suggests military construction expertise and significant financial investment over decades, indicating criminal organization with resources far beyond amateur village conspiracy. Holmes discovers systematic witness intimidation through anonymous threatening letters, property vandalism, and economic pressure applied to families cooperating with investigation. The psychological warfare demonstrates criminal organizations' sophisticated understanding of community social dynamics and pressure points that ensure cooperation through fear rather than violence. International diplomatic pressure emerges as foreign embassies begin investigating missing children cases with similar methodology. Government officials express concern about international incident potential, creating political pressure for case suppression rather than full investigation that might expose systematic institutional corruption across multiple government departments. Village children begin experiencing collective psychological trauma symptoms, nightmares, separation anxiety, and behavioral regression, as community-wide fear of supernatural threats creates genuine psychological harm regardless of criminal reality. Holmes realizes criminal operations damage entire communities through fear propagation beyond direct victims. Financial audit reveals systematic estate looting totaling hundreds of thousands of pounds embezzled from wealthy families through strategically created inheritance chaos. The criminal network's economic impact extends far beyond individual cases to systematic wealth redistribution through institutional corruption and legal manipulation. Medical supply chain investigation exposes industrial-scale sedation operations requiring pharmaceutical connections beyond village capabilities. Chemical analysis suggests military or hospital-grade anesthetic supplies obtained through corruption of major medical suppliers, indicating criminal network connections to government, military, and medical facilities. Holmes's official investigation authority becomes systematically undermined through bureaucratic obstruction, evidence tampering, and jurisdictional challenges coordinated by criminal network participants in government positions. The detective must operate increasingly outside legal authority, while maintaining evidence standards necessary for successful prosecution. Time pressure reaches critical intensity as multiple investigation tracks converge toward simultaneous exposure of criminal network, rescue of current victims, and prevention of evidence destruction. Holmes must coordinate complex operations across multiple locations while maintaining operational security against sophisticated criminal countermeasures and institutional obstruction. Criminal network desperation escalates as participants realize investigation exposure threatens not just immediate prosecution, but revelation of decades-long systematic operations affecting dozens of families and potentially triggering international diplomatic incidents. Their desperation makes them increasingly dangerous to witnesses, investigators, and each other. Village infrastructure becomes battlefield between investigation and criminal operations, as both sides attempt to control evidence, witnesses, and public opinion. The escalating conflict threatens to destroy community social fabric regardless of case outcome, creating permanent damage to trust in institutional authority. Physical danger intensifies for Holmes, Watson, and their allies as criminal network abandons subtle manipulation in favor of direct threats and violence. The investigation team must balance safety concerns against operational effectiveness while protecting innocent community members from criminal retaliation. The tension reaches breaking point as festival deadline approaches, creating artificial urgency that serves criminal interests by forcing hasty conclusions rather than thorough investigation. Holmes realizes the deadline is psychological manipulation designed to trigger mistakes that enable evidence destruction and witness elimination before criminal network exposure becomes inevitable. Surveillance preparation becomes chess match between Holmes and criminal network as both sides establish observation points across Whitmore Village. Holmes maps underground tunnel systems connecting church basement, manor foundation, medical practice storage, and bank vault access. These passages enable covert movement of unconscious victims and evidence without surface detection, explaining how systematic trafficking operations continued undetected for decades. Signal systems coordination proves crucial as Holmes establishes communication networks outside official channels to avoid Inspector Bradshaw's interference. Watson coordinates with trusted constables from neighboring jurisdictions who lack financial investment in the conspiracy. Bell pattern codes and lantern signals enable coordinated response without telegraph interception that could alert criminals to impending law enforcement action. The genealogical record manipulation reveals systematic historical falsification spanning generations. Holmes discovers that multiple wealthy families experienced strategically timed accidents and disappearances of heir children during vulnerable periods, recent deaths, business crises, family disputes, creating opportunities for legal manipulation and estate theft through coordinated institutional corruption. Village childhood folklore analysis exposes deliberate cultivation of supernatural beliefs over generations to provide cover for systematic child disappearances. Local legends about the Whitmore Wraith were strategically developed through selective storytelling and staged supernatural events that conditioned community acceptance of unexplained child losses while discouraging rational investigation. Holmes realizes financial audit expansion reveals estate manipulation involving dozens of wealthy families across multiple counties, with Timothy's case representing only recent example of systematic inheritance fraud. The criminal network's scope suggests coordination with legal professionals, bank officials, and government registry clerks across regional boundaries requiring sophisticated organizational structure. International connections emerge through financial records revealing payments from wealthy European families seeking discreet adoption services through Dr. Cross's medical practice. This transforms local inheritance fraud into systematic international child trafficking operations serving aristocratic clients, seeking heirs without legal complications or genetic uncertainty. The medical supply chain investigation exposes industrial-scale sedation operations requiring pharmaceutical connections beyond village capabilities. Chemical analysis suggests military or hospital-grade anesthetic supplies obtained through corruption of major medical suppliers, indicating criminal network connections extending to government, military, and medical facilities. Community psychology research reveals multi-generational trauma patterns suggesting systematic child trafficking operations spanning decades rather than recent criminal innovation. Genealogical analysis indicates multiple families experienced unexplained child losses during previous generations, creating community-wide conditioning to accept supernatural explanations rather than investigating criminal causes. Holmes establishes evidence preservation protocols as official support erodes through bureaucratic obstruction and jurisdictional challenges. Chief Inspector Morrison's intervention from London creates political pressure for case suppression rather than full investigation that might expose systematic institutional corruption across multiple government departments. Holmes organizes complete hypothesis reconstruction through systematic analysis of accumulated evidence spanning decades of criminal operations. Timothy's disappearance represents the culmination of systematic inheritance fraud involving institutional coordination across medical, religious, financial, and law enforcement authorities who profit from estate manipulation through strategically created legal chaos and heir elimination. The functional crime hypothesis reveals Timothy is being held alive in Ashford Manor's sealed basement chambers, kept sedated but medically stable until legal paperwork confirms estate ownership transfer to conspirators. The plan requires Timothy's legal death without physical body discovery to avoid murder charges while securing inheritance through documented disappearance and presumed death after statutory waiting period. Timeline analysis indicates final phase begins during Harvest Festival, when public attention focuses on community celebration rather than investigation activities. The conspirators exploit festival crowd chaos and fireworks noise to mask final evidence destruction and victim elimination, using community gathering as cover for completing systematic criminal operations. Dr. Cross commits desperate, arrogant gesture by making daylight visit to Ashford Manor carrying medical supplies and fresh clothing for Timothy. His professional confidence leads him to use front entrance rather than concealed tunnel access, observed by Holmes's surveillance team positioned in Manor's upper windows with clear sight lines to all approach routes. Compulsive behavior patterns become Dr. Cross's vulnerability as stress intensifies his obsessive pocket watch checking to every few minutes. Holmes realizes the timing obsession reveals critical deadline. Timothy must be relocated permanently before his 7th birthday triggers inheritance protection mechanisms that would expose decades of systematic fraud through legal scrutiny. The criminal network's desperation escalates as participants realize investigation exposure threatens not just immediate prosecution, but revelation of international trafficking operations affecting dozens of families and potentially triggering diplomatic incidents with foreign governments investigating missing children cases with similar methodology. Holmes discovers contingency elimination plans through intercepted communications between conspirators. The network intends to kill Timothy during festival fireworks, using crowd noise to mask gunshots and celebration chaos to dispose of evidence. The child's final resting place will be the old stone well where his disappearance began, creating symbolic completion that reinforces supernatural explanations. Maximum risk calculations reveal Holmes faces multiple armed conspirators who now know their operations are discovered and documented. Time remaining: 6 hours before Sunset Festival begins, with official law enforcement support compromised through institutional corruption and political pressure for case suppression rather than thorough investigation. Village social psychology reaches breaking point as residents realize their trusted authority figures systematically betrayed community trust through decades of child trafficking masked by supernatural folklore. Public pressure creates volatile conditions that could explode into mob violence against suspected conspirators, complicating rescue operations and evidence preservation. Underground facility discovery through architectural analysis reveals sophisticated medical monitoring equipment, ventilation systems, and supply storage in manor basement chambers. The infrastructure suggests military or institutional engineering expertise and significant financial investment over years, indicating criminal organization with resources far beyond amateur village conspiracy. Holmes realizes systematic witness elimination has begun as original investigation supporters experience anonymous threats, property vandalism, and economic pressure designed to ensure silence through fear rather than direct violence. The psychological warfare demonstrates criminal networks' sophisticated understanding of community social dynamics and individual pressure points. International diplomatic pressure intensifies as foreign embassies demand explanations for missing children cases with methodology matching Whitmore Village operations. Government officials express concern about potential international incidents, creating political pressure for immediate case closure rather than full investigation that might expose systematic institutional corruption. The financial audit reveals systematic wealth redistribution through estate manipulation totaling hundreds of thousands of pounds embezzled from wealthy families across multiple counties. Each successful operation funded expansion of criminal network and corruption of additional officials, creating exponential growth in criminal capability and institutional protection. Holmes faces impossible tactical choices. Immediate rescue attempt might save Timothy while allowing criminal network to escape and continue operations elsewhere. But delayed action risks victim elimination during festival chaos when conspirators complete their timeline for permanent evidence destruction. Criminal network psychology reveals different participant motivations, creating coordination vulnerabilities under extreme pressure. Dr. Cross operates from medical perfectionism, Reverend Whitmore from religious authority exploitation, Banker Thornfield from financial opportunism, and Inspector Bradshaw from coerced family protection rather than criminal greed. Village infrastructure becomes active battlefield as investigation and criminal operations compete for control of evidence, witnesses, and public opinion. The escalating conflict threatens permanent community social fabric destruction, regardless of case outcome, creating lasting damage to institutional trust and community cohesion. Physical danger reaches maximum intensity for Holmes, Watson, and investigation allies as criminal network abandons subtle manipulation for direct threats and violence. The investigation team must balance personal safety concerns against operational effectiveness while protecting innocent community members from criminal retaliation and potential mob violence. The critical point culminates with Holmes realizing festival deadline is psychological manipulation designed to force investigative mistakes that enable evidence destruction and witness elimination. The artificial urgency serves criminal interests by triggering hasty conclusions rather than methodical evidence gathering necessary for comprehensive prosecution of systematic institutional corruption. Environmental trap preparation utilizes approaching storm and festival chaos as natural cover for infiltration operations. Holmes coordinates with Watson to exploit thunder-masking movement sounds, while festival preparation crowds provide concealment for positioning surveillance equipment and sealing underground tunnel access points to force confrontation in controlled basement chambers. The abandoned manor becomes primary battlefield through strategic environmental manipulation. Holmes arranges lighting using phosphorus flares and positioned mirrors to eliminate hiding places in basement chambers while creating tactical advantages for rescue operations. Underground passages are quietly sealed using architectural knowledge to prevent escape routes and force direct confrontation. Team Responsibility Division demonstrates Holmes's tactical planning as Watson monitors Dr. Cross's movements from manor upper windows using telescope and telegraph coordination. Inspector Morrison's secretly allied deputy manages official response coordination while avoiding Bradshaw's interference and political pressure from London authorities demanding case suppression. Mrs. Ashford serves as crucial decoy operation by publicly attending festival preparations to maintain normal community appearances and prevent suspect panic that could trigger premature evidence destruction or victim elimination. Her performance requires overcoming maternal desperation while projecting confident normalcy to avoid alerting conspirators to impending law enforcement action. Holmes infiltrates basement chamber levels, following fresh air current analysis to locate Timothy's exact hiding place within the manor's extensive underground facility network. His methodical approach combines architectural knowledge, ventilation system mapping, and acoustic analysis to pinpoint victim location without triggering security measures or alerting guards. Dr. Cross demonstrates characteristic medical methodology even under extreme criminal pressure. He sedates Timothy with precise chloroform dosages, monitors vital signs using professional equipment, and maintains detailed written records of the child's medical condition throughout imprisonment. His compulsive documentation becomes crucial evidence for prosecution while revealing systematic criminal planning. The doctor's arrogant professional explanation to unconscious Timothy reveals complete criminal methodology. Unaware that Holmes records every word from adjacent chamber through architectural acoustic properties, Cross's need to justify his actions through medical rationale provides comprehensive confession that documents systematic trafficking operations spanning decades. Alternating tension sequences create maximum suspense as Holmes discovers Timothy in makeshift medical chamber, while Dr. Cross prepares final injection designed to simulate heart failure. Watson's telegraph signals warn of approaching conspirators. Reverend Whitmore and banker Thornfield arrive with disposal equipment including shovels and lime for evidence elimination. Holmes faces simultaneous tactical challenges requiring rescue of semi-conscious victim, preservation of crucial evidence, and avoidance of detection by multiple armed suspects converging on his basement location. The operational complexity demands split-second timing while maintaining noise discipline to avoid alerting additional conspirators positioned throughout the manor facility. Unforeseen complication occurs when Timothy suddenly awakens from sedated state, crying loudly and alerting all conspirators to Holmes's presence in basement chambers. The child's natural distress reaction triggers protective instincts that override optimal evidence-gathering strategy, forcing immediate tactical improvisation to ensure victim safety. Dr. Cross abandons careful planning upon hearing Timothy's cries, rushing toward medical chamber with lethal injection prepared regardless of investigation discovery. His medical perfectionism transforms into desperate violence as he determines to complete criminal mission even at cost of operational exposure and personal capture. Holmes improvises using architectural advantages, triggering ancient dumbwaiter system to create misdirecting noise in distant manor wings while using phosphorus flares to temporarily blind Dr. Cross during crucial intervention moments. The detective exploits building infrastructure as tactical weapon system against criminal operations. Precise timing calculations become critical as Holmes must coordinate Timothy rescue, evidence security, and confrontation positioning while storm winds threaten emergency lighting systems. Every element requires mathematical precision: distance to victim, illumination duration, suspect approach timing, and backup arrival coordination. Manor structural participation in tactical operations includes collapsing ceiling beams used to trap Reverend Whitmore, directed falling masonry blocking Thornfield's escape routes, and flooding basement drainage forcing conspirators towards single-monitored exit where Watson coordinates armed backup response. Thunder timing enables silent coordination between Holmes and Watson without verbal communication that could alert suspects to backup positioning. Natural sound masking allows complex tactical maneuvering while maintaining operational security against criminal countermeasures and escape attempts. Pre-climax positioning reaches maximum tension as Holmes stands 3 steps from Timothy's medical table, while Dr. Cross raises lethal syringe with professional medical precision. Footsteps of additional conspirators echo through basement corridors as storm crashes outside manor windows, creating perfect convergence of all investigative and criminal elements. The final tactical moment freezes at instant before resolution where every participant, victim, criminal, investigator, backup support, occupies predetermined positions for inevitable confrontation. Holmes must execute split-second decisions that determine not just Timothy's survival, but exposure of systematic institutional corruption spanning decades of criminal operations. Environmental conditions reach optimal convergence for evidence gathering, victim rescue, and criminal capture, as storm, festival chaos, and architectural advantages align to provide Holmes with tactical superiority over desperate criminals facing exposure and prosecution for systematic trafficking operations extending across international boundaries and government institutional corruption. Alternating bait and displacement creates unbearable suspense as Holmes executes rescue timing while conspirators converge from multiple directions. Watson's telescope surveillance reveals Dr. Cross entering manor basement through concealed tunnel access, while Reverend Whitmore and banker Thornfield approach via separate underground passages, creating 3-dimensional tactical challenge requiring precise coordination. Holmes touches climax approach through controlled environmental manipulation, using Manor's ancient bell system to summon trusted constables while simultaneously creating photographic evidence using magnesium flash powder to capture Dr. Cross with raised syringe over sedated Timothy. The visual documentation provides unbreakable legal proof of attempted murder and systematic kidnapping conspiracy. The unforeseen forcing logical improvisation occurs when Timothy's sudden awakening from sedation creates cascade of tactical complications. The child's natural fear reaction triggers protective instincts that override optimal evidence gathering, forcing Holmes to choose between comprehensive prosecution documentation and immediate victim safety under extreme time pressure. Dr. Cross's medical perfectionism becomes fatal flaw even under investigation pressure. Unable to abandon precise procedures, he insists on checking Timothy's pulse and adjusting injection angle for optimal effectiveness. This professional compulsion provides Holmes crucial intervention seconds while preserving both physical evidence and victim life. Manor architecture participates actively in tactical chess match as Holmes triggers collapsing ceiling beam to trap Reverend Whitmore, directs falling masonry to block Thornfield's escape route, and exploits flooding basement from storm drainage to force all conspirators towards single exit point, where Watson coordinates armed backup response. Thunder timing allows movement coordination without verbal communication, as Holmes calculates precise intervention. Wrestling syringe from Dr. Cross while positioning for photographic evidence capture and basement exit control. Every tactical element requires mathematical precision under extreme pressure from multiple armed suspects and environmental hazards. Emotional resolution preparation builds as Timothy awakens in critical moments, recognizing Holmes through sedation confusion while maintaining fear of Dr. Cross and unknown conspirators. The child's psychological state becomes a crucial factor in rescue success, as trauma conditioning may have altered his ability to distinguish legitimate rescuers from criminal captors. Holmes experiences quiet professional satisfaction, not just from solving complex puzzle, but from preserving innocence and reuniting family bonds that transcend legal parentage definitions. The personal emotional investment enhances professional commitment to comprehensive justice rather than simple case closure. Environmental chess culmination demonstrates Holmes's architectural knowledge as he exploits Manor structural weaknesses to create tactical advantages. Storm timing, basement flooding, and systematic tunnel sealing force confrontation in controlled space, where evidence preservation and victim safety can be simultaneously achieved. Village social psychology reaches explosive potential as festival crowds become aware of ongoing law enforcement operations. Public reaction could transform into mob violence against suspected conspirators, creating additional tactical complications for evidence preservation and community safety beyond immediate rescue objectives. Criminal network desperation peaks as participants realize systematic exposure threatens not just personal prosecution, but revelation of international operations affecting governmental diplomatic relations. Their psychological breaking points create unpredictable violence potential that threatens victims, investigators, and innocent community members. Holmes faces maximum physical danger from multiple armed conspirators who abandon subtle criminal methods for direct violence when systematic operations face inevitable exposure. The confrontation requires split-second tactical decisions while protecting unconscious victim from criminals determined to eliminate evidence permanently. Pre-climax freeze captures exact moment before resolution, where Timothy lies semi-conscious on medical table. Dr. Cross raises lethal injection with professional precision. Holmes positions for physical intervention. Watson coordinates backup response, and additional conspirators approach through sealed passages, creating perfect convergence. The timing calculation becomes mathematical precision exercise as Holmes must coordinate physical rescue, evidence preservation, suspect capture, and backup coordination, while storm conditions threaten lighting systems and basement flooding creates additional environmental hazards affecting tactical positioning. Systematic institutional corruption exposure reaches critical mass as investigation reveals decades of coordinated criminal operations involving medical, religious, financial, and law enforcement authorities. The comprehensive evidence threatens to trigger governmental scandal extending far beyond local trafficking operations. Holmes realizes rescue success depends not just on Timothy's physical safety, but on preserving evidence necessary for prosecuting systematic criminal network that will otherwise relocate operations and continue trafficking activities using refined methodology based on lessons learned from investigation challenges. Final tactical positioning demonstrates perfect convergence of investigative planning, environmental conditions, and criminal desperation as all participants occupy predetermined locations for inevitable confrontation. Holmes stands ready to execute intervention while maintaining evidence integrity and victim protection under maximum pressure. The climax preparation culminates with Holmes calculating exact intervention timing, 3 steps to Timothy's medical table, Dr. E. Cross's injection sequence, approaching footsteps of additional conspirators, and backup arrival coordination, creating perfect suspense moment before inevitable resolution of systematic criminal operations spanning decades of institutional corruption. Maximum tension achievement through environmental participation, tactical precision, and emotional stakes creates ideal climax conditions where victim rescue, criminal exposure, and systematic justice converge in single decisive moment that will determine not just individual case outcome, but community healing from decades of institutional betrayal. The Manor Bell system triggers as Holmes executes perfect timing coordination, summoning Watson and trusted constables while creating crucial photographic evidence using magnesium flash powder. The brilliant illumination captures Dr. Cross with syringe raised over Timothy's unconscious form, providing unbreakable visual proof of attempted murder and systematic kidnapping conspiracy for legal prosecution. Dr. Cross's fatal medical perfectionism becomes his ultimate downfall in the critical moment. Even under extreme investigation pressure, his professional compulsion forces him to check Timothy's pulse and adjust injection positioning for optimal effectiveness. This methodical behavior provides Holmes the crucial seconds needed for physical intervention while preserving complete evidence documentation. Holmes wrestles the lethal syringe from Dr. Cross's grasp in violent confrontation, simultaneously protecting Timothy and securing the murder weapon containing traceable chemical evidence. The physical struggle demonstrates the detective's analytical mind translating into decisive action under life-threatening circumstances where split-second decisions determine victim survival. Environmental chess reaches culmination as the manor's ancient architecture participates actively in justice. Holmes uses collapsing ceiling beam to trap Reverend Whitmore attempting escape, directs falling masonry to block banker Thornfield's underground route, and exploits storm-flooding basement to force all conspirators toward Watson's controlled exit point. Thunder crashes provide perfect acoustic cover for coordinated law enforcement response as trusted constables surround the manor, while Holmes maintains basement control. The natural sound masking enables complex tactical operations without alerting additional criminal network members who might eliminate evidence or escape through unmonitored routes. Timothy awakens in Holmes's protective custody, initially disoriented from prolonged sedation, but gradually recognizing safety through the detective's calm reassurance. The child's psychological resilience emerges as he provides crucial testimony about his captivity experience, including details about additional victims and criminal operations spanning years. Dr. Cross confesses completely under the weight of overwhelming physical evidence and photographic documentation. His medical training creates detailed confession covering decades of illegal adoption networks, inheritance fraud schemes, and systematic child trafficking operations serving wealthy clients seeking heirs without legal complications or genetic uncertainty. Systematic criminal network collapse occurs rapidly as each conspirator attempts to minimize personal liability through testimony against accomplices. Reverend Whitmore reveals genealogical manipulation spanning generations, banker Thornfield exposes financial money laundering operations, and Inspector Bradshaw admits evidence tampering under family threat coercion. The emotional climax builds as Mrs. Ashford rushes into basement chambers, reuniting with Timothy in tearful embrace that transcends biological parentage questions. Her maternal love demonstrates how family bonds created through care and commitment surpass legal definitions or genetic relationships in determining true parentage meaning. Holmes experiences profound professional satisfaction not merely from solving complex intellectual puzzle, but from preserving innocence and protecting vulnerable victims from systematic exploitation. The case represents detective work at its highest moral purpose, using analytical skills to defend those unable to protect themselves from institutional corruption. Complete evidence documentation includes the medical log detailing Timothy's captivity, chemical analysis of sedation substances, photographic proof of attempted murder, financial records showing systematic estate fraud, and witness testimony covering decades of criminal operations affecting dozens of families across multiple counties. Village community psychological healing begins immediately as supernatural explanations are replaced by rational understanding of criminal deception. Residents experience relief mixed with anger as they comprehend how trusted authority figures exploited their beliefs and social bonds for systematic personal enrichment through child trafficking operations. International implications emerge as evidence reveals connections to foreign adoption agencies and diplomatic clients seeking children through illegal trafficking networks. The case threatens to trigger international incidents requiring governmental coordination to address systematic institutional corruption, extending beyond local criminal enterprise. Holmes realizes Timothy's psychological recovery will require ongoing support to process trauma conditioning from prolonged captivity and medical manipulation. The child's resilience provides hope for complete healing, while his testimony becomes crucial for prosecuting additional cases involving similar criminal methodology. Justice mechanisms activate as comprehensive evidence enables prosecution of systematic criminal operations spanning decades rather than simple individual crimes. The legal framework addresses not just immediate kidnapping, but institutional corruption, financial fraud, and international trafficking, requiring coordinated law enforcement response. Dr. Cross receives immediate arrest for kidnapping, attempted murder, and systematic fraud, with additional charges pending for decades of adoption trafficking and medical malpractice. His complete confession provides evidence for prosecuting criminal network participants and identifying additional victims requiring investigation and support. Community social fabric begins healing process as residents understand how their natural trust and social bonds were exploited by systematic criminal operations designed to prevent rational investigation through supernatural fear and institutional manipulation. Truth provides foundation for rebuilding community confidence in legitimate authority. The climax concludes with Timothy's safety secured, criminal network exposed and arrested, evidence preserved for comprehensive prosecution, and community understanding restored through rational explanation, replacing supernatural manipulation. Holmes's methodical investigation demonstrates how analytical thinking and moral commitment combine to achieve justice for systematic institutional corruption. Emotional resolution shows family bonds strengthened through crisis as Mrs. Ashford's love for Timothy transcends biological questions, while community healing begins through shared understanding of how criminal deception exploited natural human trust for systematic financial and personal exploitation, spanning generations of victimization. Judicial consequences unfold systematically as Dr. Cross receives life imprisonment for kidnapping and attempted murder, with additional charges for decades of adoption fraud affecting dozens of families across multiple counties. Reverend Whitmore faces conspiracy charges and financial restitution to previous victims, while banker Thornfield confronts complete asset forfeiture and criminal prosecution for systematic money laundering operations. Inspector Bradshaw undergoes internal investigation for evidence tampering and obstruction of justice, though his cooperation and family threat coercion earn reduced charges with mandatory retirement from law enforcement. His case demonstrates how criminal networks exploit personal vulnerabilities to ensure institutional cooperation through fear rather than greed. The Ashford estate remains with Timothy and his adoptive family through legal provisions ensuring inheritance protection, regardless of biological parentage. New documentation establishes adoptive parent rights while providing financial security that removes future criminal targeting based on inheritance manipulation schemes. Village social transformation proves profound and lasting as Whitmore residents abandon supernatural explanations for criminal activity, though some maintain protective folklore beliefs that now serve positive community bonding rather than fear-based social control. The Harvest Festival proceeds with enhanced security and renewed community solidarity, celebrating rational truth over manipulated superstition. Multiple families discover connections to Dr. Cross's adoption network through investigation publicity, leading to painful but ultimately healing reunions and identity revelations. These discoveries create extended family networks that strengthen community bonds while providing support systems for trauma recovery and identity integration. Holmes observes systematic institutional reform as governmental authorities implement oversight procedures to prevent future corruption of medical, religious, and financial institutions through coordinated criminal exploitation. New regulations require transparency in adoption procedures, estate management, and law enforcement investigation protocols. International diplomatic resolution occurs as foreign governments coordinate investigation of missing children cases with methodology matching Whitmore Village operations. Embassy cooperation enables identification and prosecution of criminal network international connections while providing closure for families affected by systematic trafficking operations. Timothy's psychological recovery progresses through specialized treatment addressing trauma conditioning from prolonged captivity and medical manipulation. His resilience and family support create positive prognosis for complete emotional healing, while his testimony remains crucial for prosecuting additional criminal network cases. Mrs. Ashford's character transformation demonstrates profound personal growth as crisis reveals inner strength transcending Victorian social conditioning. Her willingness to abandon respectability concerns for child protection creates new family dynamics based on authentic love rather than social obligation or genetic connection. Village infrastructure undergoes security improvements including sealed underground tunnel systems, enhanced communication networks, and coordinated law enforcement protocols, preventing future criminal exploitation of architectural vulnerabilities and institutional blind spots that enabled systematic operations. Community healing process addresses multi-generational trauma patterns as residents understand how systematic criminal operations exploited natural human trust for financial gain. Truth-telling sessions and support groups help families process their victimization while building resistance to future manipulation attempts. Holmes experiences quiet professional satisfaction from comprehensive case resolution that extends beyond individual crime solving to systematic institutional reform. His methodical investigation demonstrates how analytical thinking combined with moral commitment achieves justice addressing root causes rather than surface symptoms. The wooden hoop, Timothy's toy that first spun mysteriously at the crime scene, becomes treasured family possession symbolizing the circular nature of mystery and resolution. Mrs. Ashford displays it in the nursery window where morning light creates dancing shadows, reminding the family how close they came to losing everything meaningful. This emotional colophon transforms initial evidence of criminal deception into symbol of family resilience and truth's ultimate triumph over systematic manipulation. The simple toy represents how ordinary objects can reveal extraordinary crimes when examined through analytical observation and moral commitment to justice. Final ethical reflection emerges as Holmes departs Whitmore Village, wondering whether Timothy will remember his ordeal as he grows older, and whether such remembering would constitute burden or gift, teaching resilience and the difference between family created by blood versus family created by love and commitment. The question addresses fundamental themes about trauma, memory, family definition, and community healing that extend far beyond individual criminal cases to explore human nature's capacity for both systematic evil and transcendent good, when individuals choose moral courage over personal safety or social convenience. What do you think? Should Timothy remember his experience as he grows up, or would forgetting be a blessing? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing how you'd handle these impossible moral questions. And if this investigation blew your mind, smash that subscribe button, because we're just getting started with Victorian London's darkest mysteries. Call to action. Preparation sets foundation for channel growth through viewer engagement with complex moral questions that transcend simple mystery entertainment. The case's resolution provides closure while maintaining philosophical questions that encourage ongoing discussion and community building around analytical thinking and ethical decision-making. As Holmes's carriage disappears into London fog, Whitmore Village settles into peaceful autumn evening, where children play safely while parents understand that vigilance and community cooperation provide better protection than superstition or institutional blind trust. Truth, methodically pursued and courageously defended, creates foundation for genuine security and social healing. If you want the complete dramatized version with full character dialogue and scene details, request full script integration, or send me your next mysterious title to create our next investigation into the shadows, where logic meets mystery and truth illuminates the darkest corners of human nature. Don't forget to hit that notification bell and subscribe for more mind-bending Victorian mysteries that will challenge everything you think you know about crime, justice, and the power of analytical thinking.